Well, welcome back to another Canadian Immigration Live Q&A. My name is Mark Holthe, Canadian immigration lawyer, ex-immigration officer, and former high school teacher. I am connecting in with my regular HD camera here on my iMac because my other one has decided it's going to cause problems. And those of you who watched last week and saw the lagging, I now realize it was actually my camera. So we switched over here to the HD and well, hey, it's all good. I'm all about form over substance, but we'll just have to let that go. All right, so this is Wednesday's Q&A. Alicia will be joining me tomorrow at 11 a.m. For her Q&A, and let's see if I can pull it up. Actually, I don't think I have it. She'll be joining me for tomorrow's Q&A, and actually, I can pull it up here. Isn't that pretty? So you'll want to make sure that you watch that one if you, for whatever reason, do not get your question answered today. Now, today, you guys are in luck. This is not the one-man show today. I have a co-host, and I want to welcome Chanelle. How are you, Chanelle?
Hi, Mark. I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing really good. So Chanelle, as many of you know, is the newest immigration lawyer to join our firm. And you're not so new anymore, Chanelle. When did you join us?
In November, so I'm about 6 months in now, and things are going well.
Wow.
It's been quite a journey over the past 6 months, but I'm enjoying it. It's great, like to work with everybody and to gain exposure to all these different, I guess, applications and things that we've been dealing with whilst we've been waiting for express entry to resume. It's been
Yeah,
a very diverse few months.
it sure has. And I think, as we've watched and waited for Express Entry to relaunch in a meaningful way in July, we have done a lot of different applications. And in fact, when things are really busy with Express Entry, sometimes we would refer other work out to other firms. But one of the ones that we've done a lot of is study permits. And so,
That's right.
as many of you probably know, when you don't necessarily have enough points to qualify for Express Entry, the first thing people think of is study permits. And so if that is you, you need to be aware of some pretty important things. And Chanelle, we've had a little bit of success lately with our study permits, haven't we?
We have, which has been great to see because we've been hearing of so many people being declined on their study permits. So some clients we have been working with recently, we've had some positive outcomes and outcomes that have turned around pretty quickly. So we thought it would be helpful today to talk about some of the things that you should be doing and just to raise awareness around what IRCC really look for, so that we can hopefully reduce the number of people out there who are getting declined.
Yes. And it's interesting as we've watched this and, Chanelle, as she's dove into the study permit world, I think sometimes the only thing that you guys hear online is all the horror stories, the things about people getting their applications rejected but there are absolutely, if you can do things correctly, you can astronomically increase your chances of success if you're one of those individuals who thinks that you need to come and study in Canada. Well, for whatever reason, there are some things that you can do to help and the process increase your chances of success. So Chanelle, we'll just flip over here to our website, and I think everybody knows by now that we have a blog source right here in resources. And so if you go to, and I'll toggle this off for now, and then we'll pull it up later. But at the top of our Holthe Immigration Law website, which you should be able to see the link below in the description of this live, under our resource section, we have blogs. And when you click on blogs, you can then see all of the blog posts that we've put together. And if you have not been to this site, absolutely go here. And our other colleague, Alicia, drafted the top 10 reasons for a study permit in Canada getting refused. And so definitely go and check this out. She's got our top 10 list there. But Chanelle, in your experience, and like I said, recently we've had some pretty good success. Can you highlight some of the things that are going to help people?
Yeah, so I think really what people are lacking in their applications from clients I've met with who've had study permits refused recently, although they were accepted to very good programs, they had funding, they seemed like excellent candidates for a study permit, but were refused because really, I think they were providing too little information. So we all know that the study plan is the most important document that you would need to provide as part of your study permit application. And in that, you want to be highlighting really the reasons why these studies are tied into your career and to your intention to return home, to pursue your career there, to increase your employment opportunities. And you really want to emphasize those home ties, to demonstrate that you understand that a study permit is a temporary permit for Canada and that your intention would have to be to go back home at the end of it. I've seen a number of study plans or letters of explanation where these things are addressed, but very briefly, a couple of sentences just saying that I know I need to return home and I have family there. But that's not necessarily enough for IRCC. When the officers are reviewing that, anybody can be saying just a couple of sentences, but what they really want to see is some evidence of that. You need to build on it a little bit more and even think outside the box with more unique reasons why you would have ties to go home.
Now, in your recent, can you tell us a little bit about the makeup of the recent clients that we've worked with who were successful? Countries they came from, whether they apply as individuals or a couple. Can you give give people a little hope and a little faith?
Yeah. So I have had recently, I've had an applicant from India who was approved very quickly, only in 2 or 3 weeks. It was exceptionally quick turnaround, who already had a partner in Canada. So, which usually is seen as a reason maybe for IRCC to decline, because that demonstrates a tie to Canada already. But we had a success with that. We just really linked the studies to her work experience and demonstrated how long-term that could help her internationally or back home. Went through it quite thoroughly. And I know with study permits, we often say that the study plan, you should keep it relatively brief. You don't want to overload the officer with information. But in this case, we went into more detail. We provided a lot of supporting documents to really demonstrate ties such as property, family ties, aging parents, responsibilities to return home for, to provide care and assistance to family members, which seemed to help. And we also had a couple recently from the Philippines who were approved, which can be more difficult. This is typically if you're applying as a couple, so someone coming over to do their studies with their spouse accompanying on an open work permit, that is usually a little more challenging than if you apply by yourself. But we've had some successes with that. And this couple were approved again, demonstrating ties with property, ties with family, responsibilities long-term, and even just outlining their career opportunities back home and how gaining their relevant studies and work experience in Canada is going to help them further their experiences at home. So, for example, really outlining how this overseas qualification will make them stand out in the local market, to be more competitive than their peers with possible job opportunities, and also to achieve a higher salary. So that's a key factor. In a lot of countries, getting a reputable qualification from an overseas university could actually make you really stand out in the industry and be able to step up into more senior roles where you're earning a higher wage than you would have if you did the qualification locally or didn't do it at all. So those are some of the key things we've emphasized with the recent successes we've had, which seems to typically be working as long as you can provide evidence to back it up. For example, if you own a property, provide some evidence of that. And owning property is a great one. It's a great tie to have because it shows you've got somewhere to live when you return, but also you have a huge financial interest back home to return to. And everybody, I would always also recommend to think outside the box, even if you have pets back home you want to return to. Things like that can be good to include.
Yeah. Now, here's a question from Alex Adams here. He says, please, after payment of the tuition, is $13,000 Canadian enough for a 1-year program? Thank you. What are your thoughts
Yes.
on the amount of money that you need?
So
And maybe you can even
13,000.
explain, maybe you can even talk about what the previous clients that we've had approvals, what they, what they included.
Yeah, so for the previous clients, we included a little bit more than 13,000. They did have more savings, but in particular, the couple coming across, they're coming together. So they need to show a bit more anyway. 13,000 is enough, but the more you can show, the better. So for a 1 year program, really what you would be looking at after paying tuition is ideally at least $10,000 to show that you can pay for your accommodation and expenses for the year, but more than that is better. So there are always going to be expenses that can come up that are unexpected, and having funds to account for that can reassure IRCC, but also helps you to be better prepared if those things do arise. So I would really recommend just saving as much as possible. And even in your study plan, if you're closer to that minimum sort of amount of $10,000, really map out in the study plan what your predicted expenses are. So you can look at the university website, get information from them, look at housing, look at what the market is like in the area that you'd be living in, and really predict what your accommodation will cost. Do some research to understand what your bills and food expenses will cost, what transport is in the city you'll be in for a month. Map all that out so you can calculate your expenses for the year and compare that to the funds you have available to show that they really will be enough.
All right, here is another study permit related question. This one comes from Patel. For a study permit, how do you prove work experience? So in this case, 1.8 years, if the salary of the first 1.5 months was in cash and then in the bank, no pay slips are given. So is
So
how
the best,
important, I guess one question is,
yeah.
how important is showing previous work experience to a study permit application? And then, then let's lead into proving it.
So it's not essential the same way it is for some other applications, but it definitely does help. So this is something we actually had in some of the applications we've had success with recently, are letters from the employers stating what their period of employment was, and what their role has been for the past few years. So as evidence of their employment and their work experience to date. So with those letters that we got, they weren't as thorough as they necessarily are for express entry, but they still provided the information needed to be certain that the experience was there that is then related to the studies. So asking your employer for an employment letter, even if you don't have pay slips, your employer may be willing to draft a letter and just confirm what your job duties are. If you're really struggling to get that, then even including the job description, include your resume. That's a good tool that you can prepare yourself to describe what your job has been for the past few years and what qualifications you have. Just include as much as you can to demonstrate your career history and that you've held the jobs you're saying that you've held.
Perfect. I have to pull this one up here. We are getting so many of these, Chanelle. It is a very, very good time. So Tejasveet
Oh, that is
here, she says, shout out to Mark, my immigration lawyer. Thanks to him, my application for express entry got approved after being misguided by an incompetent, self-proclaimed consultant firm. Well, leaving aside the incompetence of whatever, I can't even remember. It's been so while that her application was in the queue. I'm leaving that aside. This is something that we're getting every single day. People who've been stalled out, FSW, Outlanders, are now seeing their applications moving forward. And this is something that, we've waited for so long to see happen. And now that it's finally starting to materialize, oh my goodness, it's awesome. So thanks, Tejasveet. We'll give you a little round of applause there. But yeah, there's nothing I love more than opening up my inbox, my email inbox, and then getting all of these reports from the people that we've done our collaborative reviews with, who are now finally seeing their applications getting approved after such a long time. So thank you, Tejasveet. That's awesome. That is so cool. All right. So Chanelle is going to be with us for a little bit longer here, and then she's going to drop off. She's got a little bit of construction going on in the background, but I don't hear any of it, Chanelle. So if you feel like it's too much, you can just kind of say, okay, I'm going to head out. But we're good so far as long as you're okay.
Yeah, it's all good at the moment. It's very sporadic. It comes and goes. I'm based in downtown Toronto, so there's lots of noises during the week at the moment. Summer's here
Absolutely.
now, so they're getting out there and doing all the construction, which is inconvenient, but it's city living.
Yep. And if I go to the next one here, Ami, every single live, he's here saying, Mark, when is my application going to start moving forward? Well, he finally got his medical updated today by submitting everything up front. So this is proactive. Ami's being proactive here. And we also, Ami, hope to see that there's some other movement as well for you. But based on Tej's feet and the many, many other people that we've seen their applications moving forward, this is super, super good news. So we're, super excited about that, and hang in there. And I look forward to your report, hopefully next Wednesday or even maybe tomorrow with Alicia's live, that you've seen movement with your application. So excellent. All right, let's get to our next question. This one's from Gatry, and it says, my study permit is expired. I applied for a postgrad work permit 5 months back. No updates yet. What should I do if I have to visit my home country urgently while waiting for the postgrad work permit? Well, Gayatri, I can tell you myself that the only advice I can give you is don't leave. Don't go. Ultimately, when it comes to giving any advice, and I'm going to ring that little bell, and that's the sign that anytime people are saying, what should I do personally? Should I stay? Should I go? We would need a whole lot more information, wouldn't we, Chanelle, to be able to give you advice along those lines. But if I was the very, very first inkling that comes up anytime someone asks a question to me about whether or not they should travel or otherwise, and they have a pending application in the queue, invariably my first response is don't travel unless there is just this horrific requirement, a family member that's ill or something like that. And maybe that's what you're referring to. Lots of people have family that are still recovering and have been affected by the pandemic, and they need to travel. But do not do that unless you've really slid over to our website here, and I'll flip the screen around and booked a consultation. And Chanelle is here, and Alicia, and myself, and we've got one other lawyer that's going to be joining us here in a little bit as well. But we definitely would need a whole lot more information before we'd be able to give you any specific advice, Gayatri. But yeah, if you got something pending, like there's just so many things that can go wrong when you leave. And yes, there are things that you can do sometimes if there's a real urgent matter, and if you do it correctly, you can work it out so that you can return. But you just don't want to take those chances. You just don't unless you absolutely have to. Okay. Here's another good question. So this one is from Emmanuel, and he says, hi, Mark and Chanelle. Any ideas when persons with expiring study permits will be able to apply for the 18-month window? So this one, I'm not sure if he's a little bit confused because he says expiring study permit. Do you want to address that one, Chanelle?
Yeah, so it's actually the expiring postgraduate work permits that are eligible now for this new 18-month open work permit. So technically an extension that IRCC are offering to allow people a little bit more time because they've been affected during the pandemic. So, I mean, if you were finishing a study permit soon, you wouldn't have the postgraduate work permit in time and expiring within the window of eligibility for the 18-month work permit because it's only for postgraduate work permits that are expiring in 2022. If it's a postgraduate work permit you're talking about that's expiring and it's expiring this year, then you should be eligible as long as you didn't claim the last 18-month extension that IRCC gave. And still, we aren't yet certain that will make you ineligible for it. We need more information, but it's hard to really tell when they're going to be processing and approving those. It's just a case of keeping our eyes out and waiting for the updates. And this is a new program. So the timelines for it are really just unknown at the moment. But we could look at potentially last year, what they did previously with those extensions and how long that took, for a better idea of what we might expect this time round.
All right, so I'm just battling my little puppy here. All right, dog, come on, driving me crazy. Get. He just had to come up, so he was barking outside and scratching on the door, and then I get him up here, and then he decides, no, it's time to come down. So this is a life of a home office and all of the fun and enjoyment. Now all of my kids are all old, so I don't have them toddling into my office like they would have 10 15 years ago, but yes, sometimes you can hear my daughter singing in the distance, or playing piano or whatever they're doing. So there's lots of fun and excitement. Okay, let's go to a couple of super chats. So this one's from Reshmi, and she says, the new changes about the latest parliamentary meeting on category-wise draws. Would these category-wise draws happen in July? So I'm not sure, Chanelle, if you've followed this at all, but working its way through the channels in government is the provisions that will allow immigration to make changes that will focus on allowing them to use knock selection in the process of PR identification. So those provisions are working their way through Parliament. And as far as when they would actually come to life, Reshmi, it's hard to say how quick they push things through. They usually like to shut things down through the summer. So anything they're moving through, they like to move through very quickly. Being May 25th right now, I haven't looked to see how far it's worked its way through. I'm not sure if it would be possible for them to have it in place by, the draws happening in July. But one thing I want to point out as well is that all it requires is ministerial instruction for them to say anyone with knock codes in, these 10 knock codes we've identified, anyone who has work experience in these 10 knock codes will give you an extra 50 CRS points. So that can all be done by ministerial instruction. So it doesn't even require going through Parliament to enact new legislation and changes, amendments to the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act and the regulations. So if the minister wanted to do that and just give bonus points and do a no program specified draw, he could do that. But yes, these changes are more comprehensive and they're directed right at the act and the regulations. But we'll see, Reshmi. It's something that we're just not quite sure how it plays out. But trust me, when we have more definitive information on it, you'll get the answers here. There's a lot of people who are posting and speculating and scaring people and freaking people out, but we try generally to avoid that here in the Canadian Immigration Institute. Okay, here's a tricky one here. So the question is, can we get CRS, the comprehensive ranking system, can we get Canadian education points if we had to study online for from a designated learning institution only due to COVID restrictions while in Canada? And this is something, Alicia, that I've had to deal with at length, but in other contexts. And I get a lot of people, especially those who were not able to travel, who were studying in a Canadian institution, but they were doing it online or distance. And I'm not sure if you've had a chance to deal with this one lately, Chanelle, but one thing I can tell Tommy is that the confusion lies in eligibility for a postgrad work permit. So provisions were put in place that allowed people to be potentially, and I say potentially because there's lots of factors, eligible for a postgrad work permit, even if their education in Canada was completed online due to whatever circumstances outside of their control. The question is, well, can I then count CRS points for Canadian education? And the answer, subject to correction from any new policy or something that's been released, right away, CRS points for Canadian education cannot generally be awarded for express entry if the education was obtained online. So I remember having this specific discussion with Tracy Burt, who was running the program a while back. And this was something that we brought up. And even in the meetings that I had with the Canadian Bar Association and Immigration, we asked them, okay, well, what about these students who are taking this online studies? Can they claim these points? And the answer was repeatedly, any distance learning, whether it amounted to, if it was amounted to more than half of the program, then they could not count it as education in Canada points for the comprehensive ranking system, which is 15 points for 1 to 2 years, I think it is. And then 3 or more is 30 points. So, well, yeah. I don't know if you have anything to add to that one, Chanelle.
I would just say to have a look at your transcripts as well, because some universities were delivering partially online, partially in person, trying to bring students back. So your transcript should indicate whether or not you were considered as in-person studying or online studies. And so have a look at that as a starting point to really figure out whether you were an online student or whether you were just temporarily at home joining in virtual classes whilst the lockdowns were underway.
All right, next question's from Mohammed, and he says, this is an interesting one. Mohammed, I'm not going to ask you if you've worked more than 20 hours, but why do people ask these questions? Maybe you're an immigration consultant who's curious. How does IRCC verify if a student has worked for more than 20 hours per week when issuing the postgrad work permit? Is it through the social insurance number? What are your thoughts on that, Chanelle? Do you think, does the government have some secret internal process for verifying independently every international student who applies for a postgrad to see if they've worked more than 20 hours? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think they would be looking to verify every student, but the thing is that people do get caught. So you don't want to be that one person who does get caught. And then if you've led them to believe that you're only working 20 hours a week, not only did you breach the conditions of your study permit, but you've also misrepresented yourself. So, I'm sure there are plenty of people who don't get caught, but I would not recommend trying because you could end up in a lot more trouble than you would like.
Absolutely. When you look at any application you submit, generally there is a information sharing attestation that you agree that they can share your information with other departments as a part of actually submitting your application. So when you're going through this process and you as an international student know that maybe there was a period where you worked more than 20 hours, like it's something, once again, that I'd strongly encourage you slide over and book a consult with us, because one thing you never ever want to do ever is misrepresent. And so in that consult, we can talk about the seriousness of what's happened. And I just finished submitting we're in the process of filing, aren't we, Chanelle, postgrad work permits for a number of people that are in this situation where potentially they had, they'd maybe stopped or ceased studying for a semester and not notified IRCC, which is something we see a lot of, especially during the pandemic, or individuals that potentially did work more than 20 hours or, worked full-time all the way through when they weren't authorized to do that. And so going through this process is it's something, it's more important that you're telling the truth. And yes, it's possible. You could tell the truth, you could share that, and they could refuse your postgrad work permit. 100% possible. But do you want to compound two mistakes by adding a layer of misrepresentation on top that ultimately the consequences are even more dire, a 5-year bar? So that's something that we address, but maybe I'll just shift back and let's just talk a little bit about how potentially they could verify. Well, maybe your buddy Fred knows you worked more than 20 hours and he sends what we call a poison pen letter. No one sends letters anymore, but he notifies through the hotline that, Mohammed or Mohammed's friend, whoever he's asking for here, was working full time when he was going to school or when she was going to school. Another way is your employer, if they are, doing what they're supposed to, are remitting your employment, your portion of your taxes that your employment taxes that you have to pay. And so when those remittances take place, the government has the ability to say, okay, it suggests this is what your earnings were, and you've said your hourly wage was X. Well, the only way you can get that much money is if you were working a ton of overtime, which probably was in excess of 20 hours, or working full time. So, and then they can always call too if they felt like it. They can call the employer. They can, maybe they sent an officer to go do a sting, which rarely happens because they have more important things to do than go and hunt down people who are working a few more extra hours. But there's all sorts of ways that they could look into it. Ultimately, officers don't have a lot of time to look into this. They're too busy removing people that are security threats from Canada and, recovering from the pandemic and everything to go, digging through all this. But if an officer has a question, an IRCC officer, they've got some doubts, they absolutely have the ability to reach out to CBSA, who's the enforcement arm, and say, hey, can you look into this? I'd like you to go, visit the premises of the employer. And so I remember, Chanelle, when I started my practice down here in Lethbridge, there was an enforcement officer who was assigned to this area, and he lived down here, and he was the main person that would go investigate things. And wow, I can tell you, I knew every time he did a sting at one of the pizza places for students who were working, under the table for cash, I knew when he did his sting because my phone would start to ring and people would be calling me, oh, I've been called to go into an interview with the CBSA. What do I do? And so, and in every case, we would disclose, we would take responsibility, we wouldn't hide anything. And it's amazing, every single time that we did that, the officer, unless the person was guilty of multiple infractions, was willing to give the benefit of the doubt and give people a second chance. And, although that you can't just rely, oh, I can work and it's not a big deal. The officers are not going to go after students. You can never, ever rely upon that because they do at times. They do. And you don't want to be that person. So, all right. So there's that one. Okay. Let's see what else we have here. Next on our list. Okay. So this one from Tourism Bilaspor, consistent follower of our channel here. Hi, Mark, please tell closed work permit LMIA based takes how many months to process my file? Is in eligibility criteria. Please tell me. Okay. So basically what they're asking about is the processing time. So, yep. Chanelle, why don't we just slide over to the website and just pull it up? And I'll show you guys, those who haven't looked. So IRCC processing times is all you really need to search. And even if you're over on the other side of the world, you can probably find this. But when we scroll down here, you have the ability to pull up visiting, studying, or working. In many situations, it's work outside of Canada. And you'll see here that they do not distinguish the type of work permit. So labor market impact assessments are maybe around 8 weeks. Sometimes they're more to process. But work permits themselves is entirely dependent upon the country. So let's do India. It's always fun to do India because they're often the worst. Let's see what it is. I think the last time I looked, I think it was 48 weeks. 41.
41.
Okay.
It's getting quicker.
And that was just updated yesterday. So the processing times are coming down, but that's still just absolutely awful. So bad. So bad. All right. Okay. Let's go to our next question here. Let's see here. Okay. So this one is from Gilbert. He says, hi, Mark. I'm an Outland EE PNP, got my AOR November 2020. When will I be expected the decision? All right. Well, let's go right back to right where we came from. We'll go here. We'll go to economic immigration. We know that this is, let's just flip back here. This one is a PNP express entry. Okay.
Yeah.
And so we'll go here and then we'll go to, this would have been probably right here, PNP, and then online via express entry. Yes. And then processing times, we're down to 22 months. All right. It was at 27 months just a little while ago. But this is interesting, Chanelle, because we are seeing a massive push by the minister to try to get through these before express entry restarts in July. At least, hopefully, the federal skilled worker restarts in July. So it'll be very, very interesting to see here if these times really start to drop fast. So once again, this was last updated May 24th. Yeah. And the interesting part here, let's just go here to the levels plans, because I want to show you this IRCC 2022. Let's see if we can just pull this up. I think this is the one. Okay. Let's go up to the top. Sometimes I'm searching here and okay. Let's see if this is our winner. Okay. Nope, that's not the one. There we go. Here's our winner. Okay. So on this here, you guys can see that in the queue as of, well, let's see. I guess it was, we can probably even shift this over a bit here. Okay. So you all fit into the federal high skilled category. So in 2022, this year, their goal was to pump through, well, the low range is 52, but the high range is as high as 64. And we've actually seen them processing like crazy. And so they've blown through that. And I personally feel that they're going to get through. And as the minister indicated, probably half of these. Now, remember, this here is landings. So this is how many they intend to land in 2022. So as we're closing to May and we see that there's, they're processing like crazy to get through the backlogs. Ultimately, they are down to, I think, under their most recent, well, I think the recent total was around 30,000 that they're still trying to process and get out. And so you can see here that this right here, the target was lower because of the TR to PR pathway right here. And then the TR to PR pathway is going to be flushed through usually, well, they're expecting by the end of 2023, but you can see correspondingly the federal high skilled, which is FSW, CEC, those right here are going to then start to take a jump, and then 2024, an even bigger jump. So we know that they're continuing to aggressively, in their plans, extend invitations to a lot of people. But ultimately, when it comes to the final decisions on express entry PNP, as it stands right now, it says 22 months. But that was application submitted 22 months ago. Doesn't mean that the ones today are going to take 22 months. And it doesn't mean that anyone that's received it in November of 2020, that it's going to take 22 months for them. In all likelihood, I'm going to expect that there's going to be a ton that are going to be flushed out, and maybe even you, Gilbert, as they work through the backlog and push through the last probably 30,000 that they have outland applications. Now, with that being said, PNPs have continued to move. The invitations have continued to be extended, but yeah, the overseas networks are still trying to heat up and get back to pre-pandemic levels. Okay, let's see. How you doing, Chanelle? Are you doing okay still?
Good. Yeah, good. I think the construction workers might be taking their lunch break. So
awesome.
That's practical.
Okay, let's see here. Okay, here's an interesting one. I'm not sure. Can a person, FSW Outland, who gets a Canadian PR change their personal name upon arrival in Canada? Will it affect the PR in any way? So let's see. I'm trying to think. I've had an experience with this, Chanelle.
This is ultimately, an interesting one.
Yeah, ultimately, when you guys come into Canada, the documents that you receive from immigration are going to be linked to the name that's in your passport. After you come, and what would cause someone to change their name? Well, maybe you got married and decided to take the surname of your spouse. Well, when it comes to coming to Canada, your PR card will be issued in your name, and you do have the ability to change the name and update it. You can absolutely after you land, but it's not something. It's not like you can tell the officer, "Hey, when you issue my permanent resident card, can you issue it in my new name?" You're going to need to go through the process, get your PR card. And even if your name changes and you've got your old passport, a copy of that, as well as your new one, if your new passport has a new name, you can usually work through all of that. But you can't on the spot when you land change your name. I would recommend that in the course of getting your permanent residence, you can always, like I said, you can always book a consult with us and we can work through, because every situation is different. But often I'll tell people just to land with the passport that they have. If you get a new passport and you want to update the file, you can do that. before the landing is completed, and let immigration know. But if you're in the very last stages and you've got your passport request and your COPR's been issued, or your e-COPR, that's really not the time to change your name. It will stall everything out.
Yeah, just wait until you get your PR card. Then you can make the changes and request a new PR card and retain all evidence, all documents of your name change, your old passport. So in the future, when you renew or you go for citizenship, you've got everything there to show that you changed your name.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, this super is from Yasser, and he says, hi, Mark, will a postgrad work permit also become NOC specific in the future? What do you think, Chanelle?
I don't think so, because that would
Yeah.
really defeat the purpose of it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, postgrads
Let's
are
hope not,
designed
anyway.
to be open, right? For people to get
Yeah.
work experience in Canada after they complete their studies. And so to
Yeah,
then
'cause
make it NOC specific, yeah.
and not every degree program is tied in specifically to just one job and one NOC code. You could be coming here to study a degree which opens up plenty of opportunities in different careers, and limiting it to a NOC code would really limit your opportunities following those studies. It would render those studies a little bit ineffective, I guess, if you're then unable to actually pursue the career path you wanted to, and the whole reason you would have pursued the studies to begin with.
Okay. Let's see here if there's anything. Okay. So Yenny says, hello, Mark. I applied for a work permit extension in December 24th, 2021, but not yet received a response except for the temporary extension they issued initially. What do I do? So let's go back here. Let's take a look at the processing times again. The first thing you ask yourself, is this normal? So if we look to temporary work permit, this one is an extension from inside Canada. So initial and an extension, we get processing times. You can see that processing times are very, very lengthy. So what do we got there, Chanelle? This 30 to 550, just about 5 months. So December,
nearly 5 months.
January, February, March, April, May. So you are fully in the time period, Ayeni, that like for the processing of work permits, that you're right in that range. So I would expect that you're likely going to see some movement on your application anytime now. That's my educated guess, I guess, if you will. Okay, let's zip through here. Okay, say this. I'm going to ring the bell right here before we even get into this, my friend. So he says, hello, Mark and Chanelle. The only grounds for my study permit refusal were availability of funds. I went ahead to pay the entire tuition and purchase a GIC. How would you assess my chances? So I'm assuming on reapplying, maybe. Well, once again, ringing the bell, but I don't know, Chanelle, if you have anything to add here other than you really should book a consult, say.
Yeah, I would say to book a consult, because there might be other reasons that aren't so obvious in your previous application. It's something worth looking at a little bit more in detail and making sure that you present the information in the best possible light in the new application. Once you've been refused once, the officers can see that on the new application. So they will already see that you've been refused for available funds, and probably will look into it in more detail in your new application than they would a typical one. So it's best to talk about this further before you submit the application.
All right. Usama says, hello, what are the documents that the spouse must submit post-ITA in the studies section? Diploma only or diploma and scores also? I think this is in the context of express entry. I'm assuming, Wasama, as well, that this is that the spouse is an accompanying spouse and not the principal applicant. Ultimately, any education that is claimed in the study history section, I always include, myself personally, a copy of the diploma or degree as well as the transcript. Now, mark sheets and things like that sometimes are different, but ultimately, I try to get both the degree, diploma, as well as those the transcripts, and upload those together. If you look at the specific instructions, and I haven't pulled up the little radio button, the information button in the document checklist for a little bit, and I'm assuming it hasn't changed, it does only indicate diploma or degree that you need to provide a copy of. but I just don't take any chances. So I toss in the transcript as well if I can.
Yeah, I do the
Okay.
same. It's not worth running the risk.
It's not. So here's a LinkedIn. We've actually had a pretty good run here. We've got Facebook and YouTube and LinkedIn. Okay, so this LinkedIn user says, "Hi, Mark. Any confirmation on extension of postgrad work permit for 18 months?" So I'll let people know something here. So I want you guys to know. Well, there's two things I want you to know. First is that these little suckers are not slam dunk. So the last time immigration did it, we had a number of consults with people who screwed up their applications. But the problem was they didn't realize, and especially with 5 months processing like we've seen now, they didn't know that they had made a mistake until it was too late to fix it. And in their case, when their work permit was refused, their opportunity to stay in Canada was done, and I was singing Happy Trails, which is an old Roy Rogers. I can't remember who he sang it with, but anyways, I put it in one of my old blogs. But anyways, that Happy Trails song is what people are singing as they leave. It's an old Western song. And I won't sing it right now, but there's often very little that we can do as immigration lawyers to help you after the fact. So I vowed with the other lawyers that we were not going to make this mistake this time. We just told people at that time, well, it's a postgrad extension, and if you do things correctly, which is true, you're probably not going to have an issue. But after we saw how many little things people did to cause their applications to get bounced or rejected and lose their opportunities on this, really, it's like a lifeline being thrown from, a boat on the ocean when you've fallen overboard. This postgrad work permit extension, this 18 months that the minister has announced but not revealed yet any details, that program is one that we're going to be right on top of. So here's my instructions to you guys. Do not, under any circumstance, file that darn application until you've had a chance to listen to me share my top essential tips for essentially avoiding disaster in the context of this work permit application. So what I'm going to do, as soon as I hear, I want you guys to let me know as well, or Chanelle, or whoever you can, within the firm, let us know if you see any notification that the minister is releasing information, or if they do release information on it. That's the first thing I'll ask. Now, in many cases, it's pretty hard to beat me to the punch, but if you do hear about it, I'd love to get an email, and you can just send an email to info@holthelaw.com and just let us know if you see it first, and then I will jump on and I will do a very, very quick announcement, a breaking news update. Then, because I need at least an hour or two to kind of take a look at it, that evening, I am of that very day that it's announced, I will be doing a special live Q&A focused exclusively on that, where I'm going to walk people through it. I'm going to point out the high points, point out the things people need to be aware of, and give you my essentially top 5 reasons these applications get refused. So don't submit until you've had a chance to watch it, and make sure that you let other people know when this comes live. Because I'll have it as a scheduled live just later that evening, probably around 4 or 5 p.m., maybe 6 p.m. Mountain time, excuse me, which should catch everybody who's getting off of work here in the summer. All right. So I just want to give you guys a shout out about that. So any confirmation? No updates yet. No updates yet. Okay. All right. We got Mr. Smash here. Hello, Mr. Smash. Okay, so the question is, Mark, is it the right time to apply for a study permit for September 2022 now, or shall I go for January 2022? What do you think, Chanelle? What do you think about processing times?
I think with the processing time, you can get in for September, but you should be submitting your application now. Don't wait too much longer. I can't remember what the processing times are right now for study permits.
So they've just got a blanket 12 weeks.
Yeah.
So Chanelle's dead on there. There's no reason to wait whatsoever.
With the other ones that we've seen approved recently, I've seen it really either dead on what they were saying the processing times were, or like I said, a couple of circumstances we had them processed much quicker. But you don't want to count on it being processed quicker. I think going by the processing times is a pretty realistic overview of what you should be planning for. but also your educational institute is usually flexible somewhat. They understand, you can only come and study with the study permit. So we have found for clients who don't get processed in time, they just request to defer the program, and usually the university is accommodating, and then they can enter in the following semester. So I would aim for the September intake if that's when your program starts. And if outside of your control it doesn't happen in time, then talk to your institute and see if you can defer that to the January intake.
Great tip. Okay, let's flip back here. So next question is from Farshad, and he says, when I use the processing tool, the CIC processing time tool, the PNP via Express Entry is 22 months. Yes, we saw that today. While the CEC only is 9 months. I'm confused and concerned because even if they resume CEC draws in July, well, the one thing you have to realize, okay, let's see if there's, okay, let's get the second part of his question here. I was better off not applying for the PNP and just wait to be drawn as CEC. Well, they absolutely have different priorities, right? And so the processing times come up and down. And remember, those are historical. So like I said before, 22 months is applications that were submitted 22 months ago are getting processed now. But they've put a big push on these. So I expect that 22 months to drop significantly over the next little bit. And just because it says 22 months now does not mean, Farshad, that it is going to be 22 months for any new applications. In fact, the minister is hoping in July that they'll be able to get back to their regular processing times of under 6 months. So always keep that in mind. Okay. Sanfo, you got some good questions here on the study side, Chanelle. This is great for you. I'm glad I brought you on today. So what is the best way to explain how your second year fees would be funded when you have proved enough funds for the entirety of your first year studies during study permit application? So what do you think about that one? Because really people just have to show funds for the first year, but what are your thoughts, on the importance of showing funds even maybe for the second year?
I mean, if you can show funds for the second year, that's better. But really what IRCC asks for are funds for the first year that you can prove. And I guess there's the expectation that throughout that first year, you probably will acquire more money. You will work part-time, and you will probably get funding through your family, or if you're here on a scholarship, that would come for the second year as well. But if you can upfront show that you've already got the funds allocated to pay for your future studies and explain that in your study plan, then that's even better. It just strengthens the application. It's not necessary to do, but it's better to do if you can do it.
Great. Okay, this is from Princess Place. Hi, Mark and Chanelle. I'm getting married next month. Applied for my brother's visa on March 2nd, but no update. And so it looks like biometrics were March 8th, maybe 22, I think 2022. Mm-hmm. No update. Review of eligibility has not started. Anything I can do? So let's we know this is India.
Processing times.
It's the processing times, right? So let's go here. We are applying for a visitor visa from outside Canada. And yes, we are going to choose India here. And 129 days. So we got about 4 months. So 30, 60, 90, 120, we've got about 4 months. And so if we go back to Princess Place's question here.
March 2nd.
March 2nd. So April, May, June. So yeah.
Early July, late June is what you're looking at for approval, which there's not much you can do before you exceed those processing times. No. I just have to wait patiently, unfortunately.
Yeah. And she says she's getting married next month. Well, the hard part is that that application probably should have been submitted, in January or February, well in advance. So our hearts go out to you. I can imagine having to go through with a wedding and not being able to have your brother there to be a part of it. But processing times, there isn't anything really that you can do to restrict. When I started practice, Chanelle, I had, there was always a way to request urgent processing or reach out to an officer and explain, look, this is really important. Can you speed it up? And there was always a way to do it. But as Canada has massively expanded its immigration, volumes, the different categories, as it's become so popular because the US basically is closing off all avenues, the people become more like a number, and they're, the response often is, well, that's too bad, Princess Place, but we have 50 other people who also have, weddings that they want to have and invite family. And well, you're just in the queue. You're just another application in the queue. And so even for us as Immigration Counsel, when the processing times are stated and you're within those processing times, there's very little that we can do. So if you're well beyond them, then yes, there's things sometimes that we can do to reach out to program managers and things like that. But when it's in the normal processing window, then there's not a lot that we can do. All right, let's wrap up here with just a few more questions. Mr. Smash says, OMG, kids, you are so young. Surely you guys know how old I am. Okay, bonus question of the day. How old is Mark? You can post it in the comments. So the first person to do it will get an applause. Okay, that's kind of funny. Okay, thank you, Mr. Smash. You actually made my day. That was quite hilarious. Yes, I have kids and they're old. So let's see here. What would be the next one? Okay, here's a good question. This is from Chris. So hi, Chris. How are you doing? So Chris says, hey, Mark, can I now apply for the 18-month extension even if the guidelines is not yet out? Postgrad work permit expiring June 14th. I think the answer is no on that one, you guys. No. They may even have a different portal to apply. And that's why I want you to hold off on submitting the application, because they could have a different portal that they are using to accept these applications. And yeah, so just hang tight there, Chris. But great to connect with you. Okay, let's see here. Okay. This one, I'm not sure, Chanelle, if you've ran into this situation yet, but Carolina, how are you? Good to hear from you. She says, hi, Mark and Chanelle. Just a quick question. What is the most common reason you've seen to apply for a destitute student application? So I think what they're probably talking about is a work permit that is available for destitute students. I think that's what you're getting at, Carolina. And, in terms of the justification, it's like even humanitarian and compassion applications or temporary resident permit applications. It is so case specific, but often common reasons are your benefactor or your family member has died. Someone in your family has passed away that were supporting you, and now you're halfway through your school program, and now you don't have that access to those funds that you were counting on from your immediate family member. That's one that's so very, very common. And so there's the ability to apply for an open work permit that will allow a person to actually work full time during school, which is no easy feat, but they want to make sure that students who are, through no circumstance or fault of their own have the ability to continue their programs. So, all right, let's see if anyone has actually guessed. Well, Juliana is pretty close here. And Aisha is also pretty close. So we've got a 48 and a 50. Oh, here we go. We've got some other ones. So Flavio says 36. Carlos says 36. Arisoi says 42. Oh, let's see. I don't know what this is. They got a whole bunch of different things. So no one has actually got the right answer yet. That's actually quite funny. Oh, there you go, Juliana. She's right. I am 49 years young. Yes, I'm an old man. Now everybody is starting to put 49 down. So yes, indeed. I don't feel like I'm 49. I'm actually turning 50 this year. So yes, my youngest is in grade 11 here in Canada, and she'll be graduating next year. And the other three, I think you guys know that my oldest daughter is she's completed her first degree, and now she's going to start teaching her teaching degree in September. I've got a son who's going to school doing biomedical sciences. I'm not sure if he wants to be a doctor or what he wants to do. He's doing that. And then my youngest son, number 3, is actually down in Santiago, Chile, serving a mission for our church. So there's the crew. That's the Holthy Posse. Okay. All right. Well, I think, why don't we wrap that up there, Chanelle, for today? Couple things we do want to just wrap up with and share with everyone if you go to our firm website, and let's see if we can pull it up. I think I actually, let me see if I can refresh this page here. Looks like I shut it off. At the top, you'll see, this says Spousal Sponsorship Masterclass, but that's not the case. Okay, so what we have here, if you go to the Canadian Immigration Institute, you will see that we have our next round of courses. And one of the ones that is probably more important than any others for you guys out there, if you scroll down here, is, and yes, the spousal sponsorship will be coming up in the summer again. That cart's closed, but you can click to reserve your spot. But it's this here. So we are trying to do everything we can to help people be prepared for when Express Entry is launched. So the masterclass itself, we're holding off until June 27th to the 30th, not July 1st. I don't know if you know why not July 1st, Chanelle, but people should know not July 1st because that is Canada Day. But this 4-day masterclass, we're holding off until June the 27th because that will be right before they reinitiate the new rounds of invitations. So by that time, you're going to get an invitation to apply. But the reason we're doing that is because the cart will open on June on June the 1st. And when the cart opens, then you'll be able to subscribe to the course materials. You'll be able to purchase them. You'll be able to go through all of the many, many hours and of online, on-demand video instruction on all aspects of Express Entry, and you'll be able to prepare. So when the masterclass happens at the end of June, you'll be able to queue up all your questions and ask all of them in this series of 1 hour every evening masterclasses with yours truly as we run the Express Entry course. And this is probably hands down the most popular course that I do. And you'll see we have a little bonus here. So when you click on the link here, you can get our free top 7 essential Express Entry tips to prepare for July 2022 draws. And when you do that and you leave your email with us, then we will notify you the moment the cart is open on June the 1st so that you can get access to the course materials. And you'll see we have an option here where you can select if you're an immigration consultant or if you are, if you've already submitted an Express Entry profile. And then you can also toggle down here what areas are of most interest to you. And that helps me as I prepare for the masterclass. And yeah, so you'll get and this is only via email, our 7 essential Express Entry tips and a bonus comprehensive Express Entry PDF guide. Both of those are available for those who click on the link and give us your email address. And then we'll also notify you about the cart opening on June the 1st. All right. Well, any last minute tips or thoughts or ideas, Chanelle, that you want to leave with everyone before we drop off here today?
I just think the usual, which is if your question isn't answered on here, it's a little more complicated or out of the ordinary, then book a consultation. It's better to be safe than sorry. And it's always better for us to deal with applications before you submit them rather than trying to deal with it after it's already been declined. So Brilliant. Be proactive about it and reach out if you have any unique questions.
You bet. Brilliant. And all you have to do is click on the link in the description, and should be, whether you're watching LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube or wherever, you should be able to find the link to book a consult. But if you just want to go to holthelaw, HOLTHELAW.com, that will take you right here where you can book a consultation. All right. All right. Well, that was another great live. Thanks for joining me today, Chanelle. It was great having your insight on the study permit world. And say goodbye to everybody out there.
Thanks for having me. Bye.